All right. We'll give folks another minute or two to come on in, but we are excited to kick off this conversation in a few minutes. My good friend Debbie Irwin and me here with you for the next 20, 30 minutes or so. So give us a minute or two for folks to come in and we'll get started. It's good to see you, Debbie.
Good to see you. I'm excited about this. This
Me
has
too.
been a fun project to get kicked off this year.
I agree. It's definitely a lot of fun. We're learning a lot as both of us as builders. We can relate and empathize with what we're learning, and also because of the role you play, it's really cool to see how you're already able to put these things into practice. And we're going to get into all that with folks on the call in a few minutes. So, but before we do that, how's the week looking for you? How are you feeling about this week?
Mine is tomorrow. I don't really have many meetings this week. My husband and I's anniversary was yesterday, and so the kids are getting shipped off this weekend so we can do a staycation. And we haven't explored Richmond together. So we're like, let's go explore Richmond.
Awesome.
So I don't know. I just need to not just get through this week, but I'm excited about this week. My whole body hurts because we built a patio this weekend. And so it's recover and then go chill for the weekend. So I don't know. Week's not looking bad.
That's good. Well, happy anniversary. That's cool.
I know. It's been 12 years. He's dealt with my shenanigans for 12 years.
My wife and I hit the big 20 the end of this year. So
Well, you have to do it big.
I was going to say, I'm starting to feel the pressure of what will we do?
Yeah, you got to do something.
I know. Trust me, I know.
But deal for sure.
Yes. All right. Well, it is 11:30 and we are going to get started. As you know by now, if you've watched these, you'll be able to find them after today's live stream on our channels on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and I think you're streaming to your channels too, Debbie. So all of our friends and peeps networks will find these shows as we go. We got a lot of good stuff to get into, and actually not a ton of time, so we should jump right on in. Maybe start by telling folks who don't know you who you are, what you're doing at Lighthouse, and talk about this founder mobility. I won't even say idea anymore because you're doing it, the Founder Mobility Index. But let's talk about that a little bit as a way into the convo.
Yeah, so I'm Debbie Irwin. I'm the executive director of Lighthouse Network and the managing director of Lighthouse Network Ventures. That's new. We can chat about that later. But yeah, I am in the world of founder development. And so back when I was a JMU student, go Dukes, I had to find something to do for my senior year. So I ended up doing this senior thesis on founder syndrome, what causes small businesses to fail. And so I was working with my amazing professor, Dr. Eric Van Steenberg, and he and I took this thing that was always applied to nonprofit execs and applied it to small businesses. And so as we were moving through that, I was like, I only want to work with small businesses. And that led me down this path of founder support. And through that journey, I, worked with some small businesses, worked at a startup, got fired from a startup, and then took over this organization called SCCF several years ago, and then came to Lighthouse. And so one of the things across that entire journey is my husband and I also started a business that crashed and burned hard. And so went through all of the emotional highs and lows and everywhere in between, and just the weight that carried. And I was like, I think we can be doing founder development better. And so I took over Lighthouse a couple of years ago and started changing the way that we support founders. We look at founders, and I was like, I think that there's a way to measure this, and I think we should be measuring this differently outside of capital raised and jobs created. And so what does that look like? And then I met you, and I was like, wait, this is potentially how this could look. Hold on a second. And so was born the Founder Mobility Index.
Well, you touched on a little bit sort of the personal experience of starting, running your own business. Say a little bit more about how that has shaped your overall view of the founder experience and the founder journey.
I could trace back some of the failures and a lot of the failures of that business to three key decisions, and they were all made out of certain emotions. The first one was out of fear of my reputation. The next one was out of anger. And then the last one was made out of desperation. And so to be able to go back and understand that you cannot separate the emotion from the decision, but you can acknowledge it and work through it better. Because for the longest time growing up, it was always, we need to pull the emotion out and just be strategic, get rid of the emotion. And it's like, no, we're humans. That is not
Right.
how humans human. And so the more that we can like really work through the emotions that show up in this journey. And so that was that entire journey of making every wrong decision, finding the right mentors who would call me out on my BS, and like really creating that community for me. I was like, we need to be doing that for every founder we work with.
I think that idea of navigating our emotions, keeping it real as humans, is so important. And I just really believe that it's why you said we've met up and matched up, because the work that we do is really about understanding the human experience through the emotional layer, through our stories. And I think that's a big part of what you're after here is understanding the founder journey experience through their stories, and then matching what we're learning and hearing, matching that up to this founder mobility index that we're talking about. I wonder if now's a good time to at least just like throw that on the screen so folks can see what we're talking about when we say founder mobility. What do you think? You want me to pull that up?
Yeah, I think so. And then we can like walk through a little bit of like what we're looking at, what we're measuring, all of those reasons.
Let me get it to slideshow first. Always helpful.
And while he's getting that pulled up, one of the things about the Founder Mobility Index is this isn't a replacement for the metrics that we already have grantors and things like that wanting us to track. This is really about creating those outcomes and turning them into a story of impact. And so it's really creating the broader view of like, what does a founder really do? And so working through this Founder Mobility Index, we're looking at 4 key areas. We're looking at wealth creation, wealth recycling, resilience, continuity, and operational excellence. And the reason for that is that's taking quantitative and qualitative pieces and giving us a better narrative, a better story around founders. So that first one on wealth creation, the thing that we're really looking for, because at Lighthouse, our success metric is upward financial mobility of the founder. So we're looking at financial mobility. Are they creating businesses that increase their salary? Are they creating businesses that increase the value of the business so they can leverage it to buy a home? Because we know how hard self-employment is and entrepreneurship is in that transaction. And are they getting to liquidity events? Are we getting acquisitions? Are we getting to the point where there is wealth creation and generation for the founder? With, frankly, one of the hopes for us moving into wealth recycling. Are they getting to the point where they can then reinvest? So do they have a liquidity event to where they can then go back and invest that money? Are they getting to a $200,000 salary or more so they can be an accredited angel investor? And so for Lighthouse, for example, we've now had 18 exits across the Lighthouse network. And
that's awesome.
Snap, I know. 18 is a big number. And 7 of those founders are angel investors reinvesting in other companies. So like that is a huge full circle moment that we're looking for. So
now, real quick on that point, when you talk about founders who've exited and are now active investors in the network, how did that happen? Was that more or less just like, it happened and you're like, we got to bottle this, we got to put some intention behind this? Was that already part of the intention? Like, I think your point is it's a great number and I agree 100%. And so much of what you're talking about with the Founder Mobility Index is making that more and more common. So relative to where it was, how much of that was, thank God we got a running start versus that was already kind of part of the intention years before?
I think over the 13 years of Lighthouse, that has always been the intention. And there was a part of those folks are reinvesting in other Lighthouse founders and other folks in their community because that is how they were built as a human. Is that drive for reinvestment in community? Another aspect of it is because we are now re-engaging them and pushing them on that. And so watching them start to recycle that wealth is really exciting. And it's not just their financial wealth either. It's their knowledge and their social capital as well. And so we're seeing them come back and mentor. We're seeing them make connections to the investors that invested in them. We're seeing them just like create this flywheel effect around being an exited founder, because not every founder is going to exit at a point where they can make financial contributions into another company, but they have learned enough to go start another one. So like that's a piece of wealth recycling too, that it's not just about them investing in other companies, it's also about them doing it again, because entrepreneur is entrepreneur.
I love that. You mentioned, when we talked about some of the things we've been learning and hearing, some of the things that I think are interesting is kind of how these stories are already mapping to this founder mobility index, like at a structural level, right? We're seeing evidence, if you will, that to the degree parts of this model are a hypothesis, you're already starting to see early data that says, yes, this is true. And some of the things, let me pull this down and we'll talk a little bit about some of the insights we're already gathering. And for those of you who are interested, if you're a founder or you're an ecosystem builder, we really want you to share your experiences with us. We've dropped links in the chat. I did notice somehow, for some reason, the link in YouTube got a little wacky, so we'll fix that. But definitely want to talk more about what we're learning and how we're learning it, so that we can get more participants in there, because it's early and there's so much to glean from the stories that people have already shared. Also want to give a quick shout out to Risa, who chimed in to say, hey, she's watching us from Facebook. Glad you're with us. And Reese is one of those folks that does so much in the community. She's such a great connector. Making sure she knows what you're trying to do with Lighthouse is huge, because she knows lots of folks in this ecosystem as well. So some of the things that we have already heard and seen, let me get back to our notes page here. When we started talking about overall the learnings and the insights, right, from a story perspective, we're collecting these stories in Seek. Seek is Share More Stories' platform. We collect first-person stories either as written text or audio. You can record an audio, which most of these participants are in this founder mobility study. And really what we're asking people to do is respond to a prompt, respond to prompts about times maybe where they felt really, really supported as a founder or not, or even as an ecosystem builder and an entrepreneur support organization leader, thinking about a time where from your firsthand experience or from the conversations with your founders, where you were really able to make a difference, and other times where, despite your best intentions, you couldn't really give them the support they needed at the time they needed. So those are the stories we're looking for, right? And we'll also drop those links back in the chat in a moment. But some of what we've heard already really aligns with this overall structure, right? We're hearing things like relationship first support really matters. It matters more than people might expect. It matters much more than even the transactional help, because that belief in that long-term patient relationship is what really enables founders to be persistent, to navigate their pivots, and eventually to gain traction. We know that some founders who, as you mentioned, maybe when they're exiting, they still don't have the financial resources to invest, but maybe to start another business. That also may be true on the front end, right? They are navigating their capital stack in very different ways. And sometimes that might mean they're not yet a full-time founder. So their need to navigate the mobility on the front end is part of the conversation. We talk about fundraising in general. For most of the stories we gathered, there were lots of challenges there. I think we can definitely talk a lot about that and what you're doing to build capacity for investment in the region. We talked about founders really needing operational know-how, expert advisors who could help them navigate things ranging from customer discovery to fundraising strategies, like we just said, legal and contracting issues, IP issues, how to scale in a real meaningful way. And that, when you get to a point at that level, technical skill alone is not covering it. And I remember one story that a participant shared, just brilliant, broke down as a technical founder what their preconceived notions of advisors were, and then what their real experience was when they brought those advisors in. I wonder if there's any of those stories that are jumping out for you as you think about what you've heard or seen so far.
I think one of the ones that caught my attention was the one that talked about being seen as a founder first and not as just the company. Because I think so often when we talk about why we do founder development the way they do is because we believe that healthy founders create healthy companies. And so when they were talking about being seen, I think another one was like, we were trying to navigate through all of this, and then we found some key people that ended up connecting us in the right way. Like it just goes to prove more and more and more again that that social capital piece is so important to the founders. And it's not just about like connecting them to investors. It's about the people that will support them along the way. I think the other juxtaposition to that was seeing some of the stories where they didn't have that and how much harder it was to navigate. Because for me, that was part of my story in going through the process, part because I was too scared to tell other people that I needed help because I was running an entrepreneur support organization. I should freaking know how to do this. Another part was I didn't have those people in the community that I was in that could push me in that way. And so when I came to Richmond and I actually started running Lighthouse while that business was failing, it was a Richmond mentor that was like, you need to let it die. And remember, you still have power in that process. And so it was those moments of watching and hearing the story from someone who didn't have it versus watching the story from someone who did, that really starts to open your eyes to like, hey, this is what founders go through. But I think even more so than that was just seeing all of the shared emotions across the stories that we all anecdotally know. Like we saw that there was high anxiety and depression. No one is surprised by that. Right. But finally having the data to prove it. I think the really funny one that we all know about founders is the neuroticism and the liberalism. Like we all know that they're a little bit crazy and we love to break the rules. But like putting it into a qualitative and quantitative format, I was like, yeah, this explains why we're all a little bit nuts.
Yes. And you know, it's one thing to sort of know it. It's another thing to be able to show it, you know, and when you think about being able to see the emotional patterns in founder experiences, like you just said, and that's what we're measuring, right? We're measuring these emotions that the stories are revealing. We're measuring the themes in the stories. And then we're looking at how do we actually do something with that? How do we connect those things to the model you're building, to the program and strategy you're developing? And you've already shared, this vision is bigger than Lighthouse. You see this as something that you want to bring the broader, you know, other ecosystems, statewide, even nationally, you know, share what you're learning, share the model and share the framework so that collectively we're making the experience for founders better. And I think that speaks to something that's really important for at least for me to name. You know, most of the founders I've met, especially here in Richmond and Virginia, are really, really convicted in what they're building. And they see something, no matter what it is, whether it's B2C, B2B, whether it's almost a social venture, they see something deeply purposeful, deeply meaningful in terms of solving problems in the world. And those are not easy. They don't happen quickly. And to your earlier point, the failure rates can be high. And so I think some of what is, I won't say gratifying, but helpful to see as a founder myself is to know that no matter how you're navigating the journey, you're not alone. And that sounds cliche and it's easy to say, but again, evidence is different when you start to realize thematically, lots of founders go through these stages emotionally, not just functionally. Then you can start saying, so how do we support them at those different stages of their journey? Yes, we need the programs, we need the services, we need the intros, but how do they need to be delivered? How do they need to be packaged? How do people want to experience them? And you know, you and I said something before we jumped on. It's not just about misery loves company either, right? Like, what did you say about that point? What do you want to do with it beyond just making people feel seen?
I think like that's one of the biggest parts for me is I, as an ecosystem developer and builder, like we commiserate all of the time, but it needs to turn into something. And so how do we start creating action and interventions around this? Because you and I are talking about, it's like ADHD. We were all just, you know, raw dogging ADHD up into this point in life. Then people are like, no, there's medication, we can help. And we started to change the narrative around mental health. We started to change the narrative around how we support folks with ADHD. It's now we can start saying, hey, you don't have to just struggle as a founder. We don't have to commiserate all of the time. It doesn't have to be this bad. we can start to collectively change the narrative around what founders should be going through. Because yes, we can commiserate, but there's something more that we can do when we do it collectively, and we have the data to prove that we should be doing it differently. And so what does it look like to create this collective push around founders shouldn't be just their business? There's so much more than that. And when we start helping them detach their identity from just the business that they run, we start to create more healthy founders who create healthier companies.
Okay, that's a huge point that I want to come get into. I want to acknowledge one of the things Risa just said in the chat over on Facebook is sometimes what we're looking for is a sounding board to validate our thoughts. And I could not agree more. And it speaks to why just putting people in contact with each other is not creating community. Just saying, here's a website where you can find others is not creating community. There has to be an active effort there, an intention there. I know Risa knows that 100%. You know that. And so I think some of the insights that we're gleaning can also be, not so much what should we do, because I think a lot of those things people could look up and say, yeah, I agree, we should do that. The question is how. And if you're not clear on why it matters, why? Because if you can get the how and the why really nailed down, you can connect with those founders at a much deeper level. And that will enable them, as you just said, to feel maybe that level of not just being seen, but really supported at the places they need so they can be more successful. You talked about the whole piece, right? The whole person as a founder. And that also seems maybe a little bit like it flies in the face of the stereotype of what a founder should be, totally consumed. If you're not focused, if you're not waking up, eating, drinking, and sleeping this nonstop, you're doing it wrong. What are your thoughts on how some people see the startup and founder journey, either historically or stereotypically, and even today, versus what you're building with this Founder Mobility Index and at Lighthouse?
So I always link back to this one post, and I'm seeing if I can grab it and put it in the chat. There's a really great author. His name's Barak. He's the founder of Startup Istanbul. And he wrote this short article on the hero delusion. And there's a piece in there, and so I'm just going to read it to you because he's brilliant in this. 72% of founders develop mental health struggles. 43 to 48% end up divorced. 55% suffer chronic insomnia. 97% work every weekend. You don't just build a company, you become the company. Your identity fuses with your product. Your self-worth depends on your metrics. You start chasing freedom only to find a prettier kind of prison. The startup doesn't just drain your savings, it eats your peace, your health, your relationships, and the system calls it grit. Startups don't fail because founders quit. They fail because founders break. And it's so true because we keep making startups who we are because the Silicon Valley and all of the major markets show founder mode. And they show working from under your desk, and they show, sleeping at the office and all this other stuff. When in reality, like, that is not how business should run. And that is not how you can maintain a pace to be able to grow these companies. And there's this delusion that's how we're supposed to build, when in reality, like, that is not what a healthy founder makes and a healthy company makes. And so the more that we can change how we think about people and hustlers and visionaries and these people who are building these companies and build better support mechanisms around them, the less they break. And the less they feel like their whole being is their startup. Because the most successful startups on average are folks who are in their 40s, which means they likely have partners or families or something else going on in life. And so there's more that we need to be doing to support that. Like, for me, I am a mom of 3. I have an 8, 5, and 3-year-old. I have a spouse. We are constantly chasing everything. I'm running this organization that oftentimes operates like a startup because we're doing a lot of things and we're changing a lot of things and we're trying to make it work because funding ESOs is hard. My founders struggle through the same thing. And so what does it look like to really do founder development, not just organizational development? And that this Founder Mobility Index starts to map that for us. So then we can create more than just that belonging. We can create that emotional safety so founders can build the way they need to be building.
Somebody just commented on LinkedIn, talking about their journey, and you know, I agree 100% with what this individual said. I also think what I'm learning through my own journey and what I'm learning through this work with you is to reframe how we think about even weakness, to reframe how we think about strength in this space. The persistence that is needed is no joke. The capacity to absorb failure, it's no joke. And I think that's probably what this person is talking about. It takes a lot of emotional strength and mental strength to navigate it. And that is why it needs to be, more supported, because when you have to sort of bear all of that alone, it's everything you already described in terms of the emotional journey. I'm lucky, fortunate, grateful to have, a spouse, a team, partners and investors, and a family that supports it. And even with all of that, there's times I still resist. I want to take it all in and hold it all in and be like, because I don't want to let any of those people down. I don't want to let my family down, my investors down, my teammates down, none. So the immediate thing for me is like, if this isn't going well, I've got to fix it. And I know that that's not true, but I feel it deeply, right? And so, what I saw in some of these stories were founders who were also navigating that switch of being able to learn, not just in words, but in deeds. You are not doing this alone. It's a really hard concept, though, for most of these founders to internalize. What are your thoughts on that?
I think most founders are never going to get there on their own. I think that is a deep conversation that needs to happen. One with mental health professionals. You need a therapist. Everyone should have a therapist. I will always live by that.
Same. I love my therapist.
But two, I don't think it is reasonable to assume that a founder can get there on their own, because a lot of everything that you're describing right there of not wanting to let people down is tied to shame. And so and that's very human, and that is normal. Like that, it's so normal to feel that. And so I think the way that we start getting there is by normalizing those feelings. Because I know, like with Lighthouse right now, as we're building the next stage of Lighthouse, as we're building the for-profit and the nonprofit side, I had a board member call me out that I am efficient and can handle everything myself to a fault. And it's true. Yeah. Like I don't lean on others around me the way I should lean on others around me. And that is very normal. And it's not because I'm better than everyone else. It's not because I'm so good at my job. It's actually because I have control issues and an inability to delegate, which is what we study with founder syndrome. And
so there's control issues. What you talking about, Willis? Oh, founders have control
issues. I'm so scared. Like, what if this goes wrong? What will people think of me? And I guarantee you that, like, if you live your life with vulnerability and authenticity, like people aren't going to bat an eye if things go right. They just know that failure is a normal part of life. But like, I think we've sensationalized failure in the wrong way. Like we're only going to talk about failure once you're through it. And we have this like beautiful story to tell once it's failed and all you've learned from it, versus like talking about actively being in failure and not knowing how to fix it. Like the more that we can do that and say like, I don't know what the hell is going on right now. And so I think like that's some of the bigger pieces when we can map the founder emotions. I think another one that was super interesting with Seek was the joy, but it's fleeting. That was really scary to see, because there's certain elements of living a full life that if you only experience joy in fleeting moments because it's wrapped around the obstacles within the cyclical process of your business, like that is such a hard thing to live by constantly. And so, yeah, that's a big part.
I think we can connect this to the last two comments that were made. I think both failure and joy in the founder experience need redefinition.
Yeah.
To your point, so that we normalize failure. I'm not saying everything's just got to have a prettier word so people can absorb it, but we have so much preconceived notion and so much stigma around even the word failure. Trying to explain failure as a positive doesn't get through the first filter for lots of people. And so even when you're talking about failure is happening so many times, there's a post I see every now and then that says, if you realized you were only, 20 more failures away from full success, you would keep going, right? And the answer is, of course, because you no longer would see those failures as problems. You would see them as just, I just got to get through it. I just got to get through it. They're just gates to get through, to bust through, to run through. I think the same thing of joy, like I've been learning over recent times to bring both of those ends of that emotional spectrum in. And I'm a very emotional person. So this is hard work for me. Back to the therapist earning their keep with me, because I don't want to be so prone to overindulging the highs or the lows, because both of them are coming and going at a much more rapid clip if the activity level is as high as we want it to be. If we're doing enough things to create learning opportunities and reactions and real tests in our marketplace or in our organizations, we're gonna feel the things that come from either getting it the way we thought or not getting it the way we thought. And I think Randy makes a great point. There may be an opportunity as you think about what's in that startup, what's in that support layer, right? Therapists who've worked with founders who have that specialty and understand their unique emotional journey, even maybe some of the unique makeup. Because I agree, founders, as Risa pointed out a few comments ago, are motivated by something very specific. And the startup experience is very unique compared to other types of things that are building. So yeah, I thought those were interesting comments too, that ping on this need to understand it, to design for it, and then to deliver it to founders in a different way.
Yeah, and I think to Randy's point as well, like we already see this emerging. We already see founders who have gone to school to get their counseling degrees to then become therapists because they were startup founders and get it. And so just like you now have therapists who specialize in college athletes because they were college athletes themselves. And so you're seeing this specialty start to emerge because they've experienced it. And then that's usually who learns best from each other. So it's starting, but it has to be talked about more. I remember like talking about the early percentage of 72% of founders who struggle with mental illness, suicidal ideation, or thoughts during their first 5 years in business. And we had a partner who was like, you got to stop saying that. And I'm like, I will never stop saying that. Like, I will never stop talking about the mental struggle that our founders go through, because we have to talk about it. And that's the only way. We have to talk about the emotions. We have to talk about founders differently. We have to measure their impact differently, because the current system doesn't support them the way they should be.
Well, I mean, we could probably keep this conversation going for a really long time, which means we need to do another one soon, and talk a little bit more about, not only what we're learning, but what you're going to be doing with it, and inspire some of the other, your fellow, entrepreneur support organization leaders, ESO leaders, ecosystem builders. We'd love to hear from you. If you are in this space, and you have a job somewhat like Debbie's in your part of Virginia or the country, please share your story there. If you're a founder who's at any stage of your journey, number one, whether you ever share it with us or not, we want you to know your experience is valid. Your story really, really matters. And it can feel even a little bit emotionally vulnerable to do the act of sharing, but that's part of the process. That's part of this, sort of navigating the founder experience with better mental health that we're talking about. It's not what we headlined the conversation as, but that's definitely what it's turning into is, part of the way you do that is by opening up, by being vulnerable in a healthy way, by saying, this is what's happening, because once I get it out of my head, I can see it differently. I can see my own experience differently. And then we can see our collective experiences differently. And people like Debbie can help make those experiences better. And so, when you share your story, it can be anonymized. You don't have to give your name if you don't want to. You can change your user ID. There's all kinds of ways to protect your privacy. You may feel like I'm nowhere near where I want to be and I don't feel like being judged. Nobody's here to judge you. We're here to learn together what you're experiencing. And while we don't want to stop at Misery Loves Company, because that really isn't the point is to know that you're part of something bigger than yourself. No matter what you're building, you might be like, nobody can relate to this. And then you realize all these other founders do relate to what I'm going through. So we want you to share. We'll make sure that we drop the link in the chat again, in all platforms where we're streaming this. And I don't know, I'll give you the closing thoughts, Debbie. What do you want to say to bring us to a pause for today?
I am seeing this founder development mindset really start to take hold across the US. This is absolutely the start of the movement. And so we want more people to join us in the movement of better founder support and measuring it better. And so the more that we can get folks adopting this type of framework, because it's not proprietary, we're not going to gatekeep this, like, please use it. I think the more that we can really start to change the way entrepreneurship functions across the US. And so looking forward to folks joining in.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being with us. We'll drop some links in the chat so you can stay in touch with Debbie, learn more about what we're doing in this project in the Seek platform. And we appreciate you. Have a great day and a great week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.